Guten Tag, I'm Fumeng, and I will present this work in a special way. About 10 years ago, in 2013, I started graduate school at Tufts University. My very first research project began with this visualization perception problem between the two scatter plots, which one shows a more correlated dataset. This problem is both simple and difficult. Simple because as long as you know a bit about correlation, you can make the right judgment. The problem is difficult because you are unlikely to calculate the correlation values from the scatter plots. Instead, you might fall visualization features like a prediction ellipse in making your judgments. From 2015 to 2017, we did a follow-up paper on this. Using logistic regression and features proposed in the literature, we found some perceptual features like prediction ellipse slightly better predict people's judgments than correlation values, suggesting that they might be the feature people were looking for when making their judgments. At that point, I did not continue this topic because I just started a new PhD position at Brown University. Once Daniel Hun, the author of this paper, was invited to give a talk at our group seminar, which later became one of the motivations of this entire work. That was around 2018. Then the COVID-19 pandemic came. Like many other people, I was locked at home and therefore had more time to think. This topic often came back to my mind during that time because I had a feeling that we did not solve the problem. First, all our visualization features were built upon hypotheses specific to correlation in scatter plots. This method may not apply to other tasks or visualizations. Suppose it does. As long as we change the scatter plot slightly, we have to recollect new human judgments data. Can we have a model that automatically predicts people's judgments across different visualization tasks to avoid doing the same thing again? And even more ambitiously, can we have a model for human vision which can give us predictions about any human perceptual judgment to answer all our questions about visualization perception? Think about this. In a typical visualization perception study, the direct connection between us, the researchers, and the participants is visualization images. Perhaps we should start from images. Neural networks came to my mind because they were designed to extract features from images to solve vision tasks, and some neuroscience papers suggest that they can be a biological model for human vision. With this in my mind, I first talked to my advisor, David Laidlaw. He was super supportive and said that because there was not very much work using deep neural networks to solve visualization perception problems, so this could be interesting to explore. I also talked to one of my committee members, James Tompkin, whose name also shows up earlier in this presentation. I still remember that James told me very firmly, first, these neural networks are not human vision models. Second, their second paper did not try scatter plots very much nor human judgments, so this could be interesting to explore. With double permissions, I started to work on this project. The first thing I did is to grab our dataset from the previous paper and reproduce all the scatter plot images to run a pilot study. In this pilot study, we decided on three things. First, all the architectures, or the hyperparameters, and the third thing is we are going to predict people's left or right judgments. Then after this pilot, we recollect the dataset through prolific and started our study one. I'm not going to read the whole experimental protocol here, but I want to point out we repeat the whole fitting process 10 times and had a sanity check. We then calculate the bootstrap confidence intervals for prediction accuracy and compare them across different architectures. So the most important findings are, first, we have to use the logistic regressions as baselines. They use left and right correlation values as predictors. They know correlation as a property knowledge, but they don't see visualization images as neural networks do. Second, logistic regressions to VGs, to anti-aliased VGs, and our own design VGs performed similarly well. Therefore, we know deep neural networks work for this specific dataset. However, what we really want is to have a model to predict across different visualizations and tasks, especially when we change the scatter plots slightly. So we have to test them on different datasets. Here, Lin, a collaborator of previous papers, helped us decide that. First, we increased the number of dots from 100 to 200, and second, we show 5 because this is the most obvious question that a reviewer might ask. And second, we present outliers in each scatter plot because he had some preliminary work on this topic. Then we collect 2 new datasets and took the model of the best performing architectures from study 1 and used them to predict the new test datasets. And we also repeat the whole process 10 times and retrained them on the new training and validation test for comparison. Again, I only want to highlight the most important findings. So first, we found that surprisingly, the regressions suffer from a large decline in prediction accuracy. However, neural networks like VGs shows almost no decline in their prediction accuracy, suggests that they have better generalizability on these 2 datasets. If we think about this a little, logistic regressions essentially learn a threshold between left and right, but they don't know that the images are different right now. On the other hand, neural networks know the input is different, but the problem is that we don't know how they make a prediction in order to explain their generalizability. Yuxin, a friend of mine, who has some similar explainable AI on this topic, suggests 2 methods. One is GrandCam, which explains a single image, and the other one is to compute images that can activate a neural network model the most, and those images are considered features learned by a neural network and called feature visualizations. We took the second way because it is more useful and could solve our problems of extracting perceptual features from different visualizations. So we took models from study 1 and compute feature visualizations for each neuron in each layer, and then cluster them layer by layer. Again, I'm not going to explain each of the images, but only want to highlight the most important findings. So in the deeper layers, we found there are interpretable features like Gaussian kernels and correlation lines. The Gaussian kernel may suggest that people may not just looking at the prediction ellipse, they also need density information. Importantly, this process does not rely on our hypothesis and seems to generate a complete list of perceptual features, which partially explain the model generalizability and solve the problem of extracting perceptual features from different visualizations, and that was in the middle of 2022. This is a very brief overview of our paper as well as our 10 years in 10 minutes. Of course, I feel I oversimplified the co-authors' contributions very much. All of them were very helpful in terms of thinking about what we learned from this project. First, with our prior knowledge about correlation perception in scatter plots, we think convolutional neural networks are roughly extracting the right features. And this way of starting with visualization images but thinking about the perception problem backwards seems to be a promising way. And last, we may need visualization-specific neural networks architectures because those deep learning architectures were designed for natural images, which are very different from visualization images. So again, did we solve this problem? I don't think so, but I think we have something to think about for the next 10 years. And thank you so much for listening.